For generations, we've been told that conventional wisdom is just that, wisdom. Yet, when we dig deeper, it often appears to be more about tradition than truth. The ideas that have shaped our society weren't always based on insight or innovation. Sometimes, they were simply the easiest path to follow, the safest bet for those in power. Today, let's unravel why breaking away from these well-worn paths is not only risky, but absolutely necessary. Let's rewind to the early days of Hollywood. The film industry began to take shape in the early 1900s, with the first studios springing up along Sunset Boulevard. Back then, society was divided along rigid lines, segregation was the norm, and women were yet to be seen in most workplaces. The big-money decisions in filmmaking were made by a narrow slice of society, older white men. Naturally, the stories that made it to the screen centered on characters who looked like them and lived lives not so far removed from their own. The films that brought in the most profit followed a familiar formula: predominantly male, Caucasian casts, middle-class settings, and uplifting conclusions. For decades, this blueprint went largely unchallenged. Fast forward to today, and not much has changed. Take a look at the last few years of the Academy Awards, where glimmers of progress often give way to the same old story. A momentary nod to diversity is followed by a reversion to form, and the cycle continues. While trailblazers like Sidney Poitier and Halle Berry made history with their Oscar wins, decades still pass without substantial shifts in representation. Even now, roughly 92% of top-grossing films are directed by men, and white actors dominate 86% of leading roles. It's not wisdom that's guided these trends, but the comfort of convention. The question then becomes, how do we break free from such deep-rooted norms? How do we encourage an industry, or any field for that matter, to take risks on untested ideas, especially when financial stakes are high? This is where the story of the Blacklist comes in, a game-changing initiative that opened doors for countless screenplays once deemed too unconventional for mainstream studios. Founded in 2005 by Franklin Leonard, a film executive who was tired of seeing brilliant scripts buried, the Blacklist became a platform where overlooked works could find a second chance. Leonard had seen firsthand how decision-makers in Hollywood often dismissed projects that didn't fit the mold, believing that audiences wouldn't embrace them. To challenge this, he reached out to 75 development executives, asking them to share the best unproduced screenplays they'd read that year. The result was a list circulated among those same executives, who began to see what could happen when they ventured beyond convention. Since then, more than 440 Blacklist scripts have been turned into feature films, earning acclaim, box office success, and a staggering 241 Academy Award nominations. Films like The King's Speech, Juno, Argo, and Slumdog Millionaire may never have made it to the big screen without this alternative pathway. And the statistics don't lie. The stories brought to life through the Blacklist have not only captivated audiences, but also challenged the industry to reconsider its biases. Yet the most telling detail is this: these films succeeded despite being doubted by the very system that eventually celebrated them. So, what does this teach us about conventional wisdom? It reveals a sobering truth. Convention often masquerades as wisdom, but it is in fact just comfort dressed up in authority. The real wisdom lies in questioning the status quo, daring to believe that there are other ways, perhaps even better ways, to approach our challenges. It is understandable to follow the old rules because that path is familiar and low risk. However, taking a step into the unknown, though uncomfortable, is where true progress happens. This lesson extends beyond Hollywood. Think about how radical it would have sounded 10 years ago to suggest working remotely full-time or earning a living through passive income streams. Such ideas would have seemed far-fetched or even reckless. Today, remote work and gig economies are not just accepted, they're celebrated. Those who dared to take the leap early on have found themselves ahead of the curve, and the world is now catching up. The discomfort that comes with questioning convention isn't a sign of being lost. It's a signal that you're moving towards something new. When you doubt yourself because you're doing things differently, remember that the greatest innovators, the most inspiring artists, and the bravest activists were often met with skepticism. People will ask questions and raise doubts, not because there's no merit in your ideas, but because they can't yet see beyond the familiar. And when they ask, keep in mind that they are only reflecting the limitations of their own experiences. Breaking from convention might feel like swimming against a powerful current, but that is precisely where the true rewards lie. In a world content to follow the well-trodden path, there is an opportunity for you to chart a new course. So, when the doubts creep in, when the voices of skepticism grow louder, remind yourself that convention is not the same as wisdom. Seek out the genuine insights that lead to transformation and embrace the risk of going against the grain. It's often the only way to bring about the change that everyone will one day wonder how they lived without.